Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern from Talent and Teams Consulting.
And today I'm so honored to introduce to you two of my favorite fellow coaches, Kevin Fallon and Michael Stafford. Kevin is a fellow Gallup certified coach. So we actually met during our certified training in Nebraska at Gallup years ago. Um, we went through the strength summit and then drank from the fire hose, as they say, as we learned all things strengths. Though our talents are quite different, we made a connection, and I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. And Michael, welcome back. You all, audience, may remember Michael and his wonderful accent, as he's from Ireland. So he's here to talk to us again. Michael is a fellow Eat to Grow coach. We actually went through our Eat to Grow certification together, and he was in my cohort, and he was the first person that I connected with. And in that moment of meeting new people, learning new things, people from all around the world, mind you, not even just, the US, which was new to me in this virtual place that we're in. He was so wonderful. He saw me for who I am. He heard me and made me feel validated. So I'm so excited he's back today to talk to us about individualization too. So welcome back, Michael.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Chad. Lovely to be back.
Great. So Chad, we want to run us through what we're learning about today.
Sure. So we're going to talk about the talent theme, the CliftonStrengths talent theme, individualization. And Gallup defines this theme as follows. People exceptionally talented in the individualization theme are intrigued with the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how different people can work together productively. So with that wonderful introduction, I loved how Jen weaved individualization right into that introduction, especially for Michael. And thank you very much for joining us, Kevin. It's wonderful to meet you both. We want to talk about individualization, and we're going to start off with our almost default question, which is, how does this theme show up for each of you? Behaviors and ways this shows up, and maybe ways people who work with you might notice it. And I'm going to start with Kevin. Just you happen to be first on my screen, so I'm going to invite you first to start.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Really, if we want to look at it at work and kind of the professional context, I see drawing on individualization three main ways. When I'm selling, a big part of my job has encompassed selling. And when I'm selling to different audiences, I draw on individualization to speak in terms that are really going to resonate with them. So like give you one example, I would be involved in open house weekends at the university that I was working for. And if I was in a room full of parents, the focus was what's on their mind, what are they worried about? Return on investment. So I would talk about how our department would help them achieve a good return on the investment that they were making in their students' education. If I was speaking to a room full of students, I'm not going to talk about return on investment. I'm going to talk about things that a college student or somebody at the age of 18 years old is thinking about. Is this going to be a great place for me to learn and grow? And am I going to enjoy the area and the other students? Another professional context when I would draw on individualization would be leading teams. I've had a couple of opportunities throughout my career where I inherited underperforming teams that were not meeting objectives. And often, in fact, I can tell you every single time I would use individualization and find out that the reason why they were underperforming is no one was listening to them as individuals. No one was recognizing their individual strengths and contributions. And once we aligned the work and the strategy with their strengths and what they were passionate about, what they were good at, the performance flourished, which I think for me, was probably one of the most rewarding and most exciting parts of my career. And the third kind of professional work context would be coaching. Obviously, and when I've been working with different clients, both as a coach and also as a consultant, individualization comes in because you're working with them, kind of meeting them where they're at and how they like to do things. And then I know you brought up, kind of on the personal, kind of on the home front.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that comes to mind are, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Okay.
In in motivating them to get things done that they may not want to do, or kind of achieve the greater purpose. So, individualization comes in because, my son just loves to think about things in terms of geography. So anything I can do to bring it around to geography, he's gonna chime right in.
Nice.
And then I know we're going to additional conversation around that, like how individualization at home can be a plus, but it can also be a minus. And I've got some great stories on that.
Okay.
Great.
And I actually just want to ask real quick, could you quickly tell us where individualization falls in terms of your theme rankings?
Sure, it's number 3.
Number 3 for you. Okay.
Yep. So
I only,
number 1 restorative, number 2 strategic, and then individualization number 3.
Got it. Okay. I only asked because part of the reason that we invited both of you on, and I meant to mention this earlier on, is mine is number 9. So it touches on some of the work I do, but it's not particularly high. And then Jen, could you remind me of where this falls for you? Because
Yeah.
I think it's way down your list, and I can't remember exactly.
It's 18.
Okay.
I'm not even sure that this would be in a supporting strength at this point. It might be one of my lesser.
Okay.
I have
All
a
right.
heck of a time with figuring that out. But I love feeling it from others. So
Wonderful. And so that brings us back around, since you were so nice in talking about how you felt heard by Michael. Michael, could you start us off by telling us where this one falls for you, and then go back to the original question of how does this show up? Behaviors, traits, activities.
Yeah. Okay. So it falls in number 3. I've got maximizer number 1. Then I have input number 2, individualization 3, relator 4, and harmony 5. Um, if I look at my life in terms of individualization, I would often think that it should be 1, because it's that unique way in which I see the world and everybody else in it. My career a lot in HR is probably where it's come to the fore, because there's an ability when you're a HR professional, I suppose, to be able to manage many different stakeholder relationships, and manage and influence and build relationships with teams of all different dynamics across the globe in certain circumstances as well. So having that ability to really know somebody and remember that is really, really helpful. And I think in a professional context. But in a personal context as well, it's really powerful strength, because I feel like you see people almost immediately. So for me, it's like I get you, I see you, I hear you. Going back to like what Jen said earlier, and there's an energy that I in particular get from knowing somebody's uniqueness. So if they tell me something about them, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me more. And that you served me really well when I was growing my business, because from a networking perspective, I would, people wanted to tell me more, because I was like, wow, tell me more. I want to hear more from you. So that really helped in that regard.
Nice.
That's awesome.
It's funny. I forgot to. It's a funny story, because listening to Michael reminded me. Back in 2008, when I was first introduced to strengths, and I had no idea what it was or anything about, and I received my report and I was reading, and individualization showed up right there up near the top, and I'm thinking, I'm not a selfish person. I'm not always thinking about me as an individual. And I was like, what? And then I read the description, and then I read the report even further, and then I was like, okay, now it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just building on that, Kevin, was there something in particular about the word that struck you as, well, this is sort of selfish, or this is me focused, that maybe a new listener or somebody just getting started with CliftonStrengths might resonate with, in terms of seeing that word and then maybe a phrase or a part of the description that really kind of clued you over, or made that mental switch of, oh, this isn't about being selfish. So just maybe
Well,
detail your mental voyage a little bit clearer, so that maybe maybe a newbie to strengths might be able to follow a similar path.
sure. Yeah, I think I was just zeroing in on the word individual
Mhm.
and
Okay.
thinking and having that kind of initial reaction that I'm only focused on me as an individual. I'm
Got
to me, and not like that's the opposite of me.
it.
Um, and then once I read the initial brief, when they give you the report right there at the top, it says, people who are especially talented in the individualization theme are intrigued with the unique qualities of each person and have a gift for figuring out how people who are different can work together. It was once I read that, I'm like, okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think
Got it.
it was just the word itself. It's like,
Got it.
you know how people when they see relator and they think realtor, I should be a
Right.
realtor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have that mistake over here at this side of the globe.
So
We
funny.
because
Yeah.
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 And
Well,
and we talked about that, Chad, in our harmony episode
right.
specifically because when we see the word harmony, so many people are thinking, oh, well, like kumbaya and whatever, and like it has more of a like hippie connotation to it or something like it's all like peace and love, man. And like, yes, we all want peace and love, but harmony comes from a different place. So I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful how Gallup's descriptions really change what we think about these words and how they're used. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Kevin.
Yeah. Thank you. One other sort of follow-up question I wanted to ask, because Michael, you started down this track of connecting it with another theme, and I was just wondering, in addition to relator or realtor, depending upon how you want to look at the word, um, we'll talk about
Hilarious.
CliftonStrengths relator.
Yes.
Is seems to be a talent theme that I'm hearing coming through that you tie this one with on a regular basis. Are there other themes that really kind of either flavor this theme, or does this one end up flavoring all the others?
Okay, so I'll try and wrap this up as succinctly as possible. So when I think of individualization, it's I know who you are. I see you. Okay. When I think of I was going to say realtor, relator. When I
Sorry.
think of relator, I think of I want to know you and I want you to know me. So
Mhm.
there's an almost like a dynamic there of give and take. While as I
Okay.
feel with individualization, it's more focused on the other
Okay.
person. Okay. But I've input at number two, and if I think of uniqueness about people and their strengths and who they are and what makes them fabulous, and then I tie that in with input, that for me goes deeper on such a bit deeper level of wanting to know the person. So down to the books they like, down to the next gift that they're going to get. So there's an element of how can I help this person's uniqueness grow? Because remember, you're thinking of input. It's strategic thinking mindset. So
Yeah.
you're thinking, how can I grow this person? So if they're telling me that they like, for example, Kevin's son likes geography, I'm going already. Geography book. I need to get an encyclopedia. It's their birthday when they're in 6 months' time. That's the perfect gift, and that's why. So it's the balancing of those two I find works really well.
Nice. Thank you for wonderful
Yeah.
examples too. I think that'll help our listeners understand this theme a little bit more. Kevin, is there a talent theme that you find common is a common coupling with individualization, and kind of in which direction does it flow?
Absolutely. I mean, I've got four of them that it just feels like it's constant. Restorative when I'm fixing things in
Okay.
a team setting. Because again, I've gone through a lot of change journeys with some pretty broken and dysfunctional teams, and
Yeah.
um, arranger. If again, if it's that team building kind of, so thinking about the individuals on the team and then arranging the workflow around that. Activator, when we're trying to launch a change journey. So a lot of the change management projects that I've been involved in, um, the individualization, figuring out each person's unique skills, what they offer to the team, when we're activating that journey. And then for me, strategic is one or two, too. Um, constant between, thinking strategically about how I'm going to get something done, and then the resources that I have to do it, and then making sure that, you know, I'm maximizing. I wonder where maximizer is. You know what? I forgot where maximizer is. As I say that, I mean, like literally using the words, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you very much for at least introducing us to the theme and a lot of the behaviors. You know, I'm taking in so much from this episode. Just thinking about how this shows up and how others might start to identify or realize that they're working with somebody that has individualization as a top talent theme, even if they haven't, you know, taken the assessment or, you know, done the work. Some of the behaviors you've laid out have been beautiful examples. Jen, do you want to take us in the direction of sort of what we usually do around, you know, sort of positives and negatives?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is that time where we're going to start with that, like all of our talents, whether overused, underused, or maybe we just like are burning hot in this case, have that like tendency to go to the dark side, right? So that like shadow, the basements, whatever you want to call that, where these talents can maybe get us in trouble and cause some negative impacts on our life. So because Michael already looks like he's pensive and in thought, I'm going to start with Michael. Michael, can you share with us
I was
ways
going to
that
say, start with Kevin, please.
yeah, because he's like, he needed a little more
I'm
time
going,
to
I'm
get
going
through
deep
those
in
pensive
pencil
thoughts.
so I want
Oh.
to start with you. Can you share with us where you feel like the individualization might has had some negative impacts in your life?
Yeah, so I'm going to say from just for one that's cropped into mind based on previous conversations is if I'm developing a program for clients and I'm taking on board everything that the clients or the corporation wants to get from the program, okay? Sometimes individualization can go into overdrive, I like to call it, where it's hijacking me. So I can't, because of individualization, I can't generalize. And then the generalization won't help me to get a program. I get it done. Maximizer number one. So it gets done, but it does hijack me sometimes in that regard, where I'll spend too much time thinking of each person's individual nudge or intervention, when in fact it could just be a generalization that would do the same work in that
Yeah.
context.
So interesting. Yeah,
It,
that's great.
you know, it's really interesting, Michael. What I heard there was you have maximizer going in both directions. So you have maximizer applied to individualization and thinking you want to make the maximum impact on each individual, but then you're trying to maximize the generality of the program. And those are
Yes.
working in basically two very opposing
Yes.
directions. That's fascinating.
It's
Pulling.
fascinating, Chad, and I'm the one suffering. The clients are not. When I
Right.
say suffer, I'm the one that, I will take the hit emotionally, physically, spiritually on trying to make that better. When in fact, I should be saying it's better already in that
Yeah.
regard. And I like to refer to this. Some of my colleagues that I work with and other coaches call this Michael's rabbit hole. So he's down there,
Yeah.
and he's there and he's not coming up for air until for a while. So that's where
my
it can
gosh.
show up in
Yeah.
a negative way.
Yeah.
You shared with us in the pre-show this managing the exit interview, like from your HR like place.
Yeah.
Will you share with us, with our audience, a little bit about like what that felt like for you personally?
Yeah. I mean, even now when you say it, I'm going, oh, I feel it. Yeah. So from a HR perspective, you're trying to, your exit interview happening and you're more or less telling somebody they're not a right fit for the company and that they have to go. Okay. And yet you see them and you're like, oh God, you feel like you want to help them. So there's, when I first started in the industry, I would have been saying to myself, okay, I'm losing sleep over this. Now I need to be able to go, if I'm standing in front of a judge for whatever reason to say that a decision was made that the employee didn't agree with and took a case, for example, against the employer, just generalization here, then I can say, from an evidence perspective, here's the procedure that we followed, and this is why it was the best option for everybody involved. But what I will find I will also do in an exit interview is I'll also say to that person, and if you need additional career coaching, or you need any help with confidence, or you need any help with this, that, and the other, then please call on me. So it's like, you know, we're sometimes our defenders of other people
Yeah.
to our own energy depletion when we need to manage that. I can find
Yeah.
it can slip in there.
That's great. Yeah.
Nice.
I knew that would pull that defender out of you, and that was what I was going for. So thank you so much for bringing that back to us. Kevin, those were some great examples from Michael. Do you have some examples in your life of where your individualization might have gone a little dark side for you?
Oh, sure. I mean, at work, because I also have had a career in HR, and at work, very similar situations, especially, it can really become a challenge if individualization's in your top five and you're a middle manager, because the senior people above you may be giving you a directive that, hey, that person's not making it, and you have to counsel them out of the organization. But if your individualization kicks in, then you're going to naturally push back on the person above you and say, well, can I have a little more time to rehabilitate them, to kind of redirect and help coach them and coach them up. Sometimes there's a little receptivity towards it, and other times, I've been in situations where absolutely not. It's like, you have to execute. So, people who aren't initiated into strengths, they might, if they're working with somebody who has individualization really high, they might perceive it as, you're taking too long, you're dragging your feet,
Mm.
you're pushing back too much, just take your orders and just go and just get it done. And then I think, on the personal side, I used to drive my family absolutely crazy when we were planning a family party, because I would say stuff like, well, Aunt Joan doesn't like burgers. Aunt Joan would rather have grilled chicken. And,
Mm.
Cousin Marty wants that. And it would be
Oh.
like, just go to the store and get the stuff and just put the burgers on the grill. I mean, don't and so you've ever heard the expression, you're overthinking the overthinking, and they kind of, so party planning at home was challenging, because I would think about every individual coming to the party and wanting them to have a great time and wanting them to have a menu that they would love. And, I see
Yeah.
Michael making a lot of,
It's like we're the same people here, Kevin. Jesus.
well, wait till we talk about your card file.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
We'll
This
get
is
there. We'll get there.
this is
I,
no, go
I just
ahead.
want to point out something that came out in both answers that I think is really interesting, because one of the reasons why Jen and I started this was we were having really deep conversations about our deliberative, and that being our rabbit hole a lot of the
Mhm.
times. And both of you have kind of struck on the same sort of thread, which is it's a risk assessment sort of, you're looking at what are the risks of having multiple people at the party. Like, do we not invite the person that won't eat the hamburgers, or do we go out and expand the menu? um and so it's interesting that that same rabbit hole is showing up in all four of us, but coming from two very different
Different
places.
places.
For the two of you, it's from individualization, and for Jen and I, it's coming from deliberative. And I just thought that was a really intriguing thought that I had not necessarily thought of before when I think of individualization.
My deliberative comes in at 34, which is interesting.
Oh
So to your point,
wow!
I mean, you raise a great point
Yeah,
to make that illustration.
yeah.
So Kevin's my opposite in this case, because my strategic is 34. So nice work there.
But
I
isn't
love
that
it.
the beauty of
Yes.
how the strengths show up, and they have to be used with another strength in order to
Yeah.
reel you in, or lean in, or dial in, or whatever you call
Yeah,
it in that regard? Because
Right.
yeah,
on its own, it's just I don't know. It's just
yeah,
It's why we're all unique, right? Because just because you like even just in you two talking about your individualization with relate or input versus
yeah,
strategic, and it's just amazing just to see just how differently they work, even though they're the same theme, the same grouping of talents, but we all have that like unique edge to it. Just like
yeah,
Chad and I with our deliberatives are quite different when we get looking at them, but also have like a lot of the same themes. I love
yeah.
this topic.
Kevin, I'm interested to ask, just because you mentioned it, and I was like, now what would I choose there? When you said about all the different personalities and the different types of food, strategically, would you go with invite, and
Oh.
Chad mentioned, would you go with inviting less people to the party, or would you go with inviting more people to the party and therefore more menu items?
I would definitely choose the latter, where I would say let's go all out, and
Yeah.
let's, and then let's just have it. I mean, I remember my daughter's one birthday party. We literally ended up creating an entire buffet. We went and bought the catering trays and the little burners to go underneath,
Oh, jeez.
and I mean, I was having a ball,
Yeah.
but other people were sitting there shaking their heads like he has lost his mind. Like, and then interestingly enough, the next year when we were planning the same party, everyone unanimously said, let's just hire a caterer. Let's try that route.
Oh,
We're pulling that right off of your plate, so you don't have to make
Right.
it work for everyone. Then, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it, guys. So
All right.
I want to flip this back then, because we're already talking about the ways this shows up, and we're laughing because it's true, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about the ways that this just makes it is your superpower, the ways it impacts your life and work that have made you successful, in any context that you want to start from. Michael.
Me again. Chicken. I know.
I was gonna say, I thought it was Kevin's turn, but hey.
Throwing it at you.
Yeah, you're throwing it at me. So I know some people that will read up on individualization, and they'll know that it is about uniqueness of people. But for me, how it shows up for me is that it's the birthday gift. It's the present for people. It's the thought that goes into that. And it's also the planning of that. So my mother's birthday is gone, so in January, okay? And I gave her a card for her birthday. Great. And the following week I was in a shop, and I came across this card, and I was like, oh my God, that's the perfect card for mom. And I bought it there and then, even though her birthday's not until next year, because I have to have that. And behind, don't take it out, but I've got a box, and in that box is multitudes of cards and presents and picture frames and postcards from places I've been that I know will resonate and will make a memory and an impact for one of my friends or a family member in the future. So I find that's where it's a really good superpower for me.
Nice. Um, I wanted to talk to you about, you had said, you had given some thought around, identity and labels, and
Oh, yeah.
what that said to you about your individualization, and I thought that was really powerful. I wanted to come back to that too.
Yeah, so as an individual, like we're celebrating, I'm just noticing the dog has just jumped up.
Oh,
well, we got another
welcome.
guest.
Hi, welcome to the Strengths podcast. Can you give me a few
Yes.
minutes, please? So sorry about that. Apologies.
Awesome.
So he's like, "Are you talking about individualization again, Michael?
Here,
Come
let me
on,
come in.
let me come in." So for me, labeled, like, we're celebrating the uniqueness of the individual. We're celebrating their superpower and that's what we're recognizing. And with the way the world is going now in terms of pronouns and the way people want to be identified, and when I say want to be, that's their choice. It's how
Mhm.
they want to identify. So if there's 100 pronouns, for me, it's like, so what? It's the way in which a person wants to be identified, who they're known as, and we need to see that person. That's where I go. So, 5, 6 years ago, I went and done a course just on gender and pronouns and how people wanted to be identified, because I was like, I need to know this. I need to
Mhm.
know. And one of the most powerful conversations I had in a coaching capacity with somebody who was identifying as a pronoun that we wouldn't have either known or have used before, they said, it's only a label. I'm Michael. I'm Jen. I'm Chad.
Yeah.
Just call me that." And it
Mhm.
really, really resonated with me around, it's the individualization again. I see you. And that's where I feel, I get really, really, almost, I'm going to use the term angry if I feel people are disrespecting someone's uniqueness.
Mm,
Nice.
And
that's
family
powerful.
members will sometimes poke the bear
Yeah, they're good
because
at
they're
that,
great
aren't
at that.
they?
Right.
They're
Mhm.
great at that.
Yeah. Those that
Well,
those that are closest to us, right? It's always
Yep.
that.
yes. And that was what I loved about that. You could see it both on the positive side and the negatives. You brought them both back to that like defender mode. You are seeing people for who they are with your individualization talents, and they're allowing you to defend others for who they are uniquely, and not trying to make them fit a certain mold. And that's what I love about hearing this from you too with your individualization talents, because it's coming through very perfectly. Kevin, um, I noticed you were making some faces and some laughing about Michael's card box, and so I want to hear from you and in the ways that this is, you know, a superpower for you, how it shows up.
So before I tell you, okay, all right. So before I tell you how it's a superpower, I just can't get over Michael's card comment because it was getting so ridiculous with me. I would be sent to the store to get a graduation card for the nephew and come back with 6 cards. And I'd be like, but this one's perfect for Aunt, and Evie, and this one's perfect for Mom. And so it got to the point where a metal file cabinet drawer was set up with the hanging folders, and there's one folder, cards for
Oh my
Mom,
goodness.
because I might see a Mother's Day card. Like I might shop for a Mother's Day card and I might see 2 cards that I love. So I'll buy both of them and put one in the file folder for next year,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I can't get over that. I just cannot, because I can't tell you how much people have teased me about that through the years. But in all seriousness, in terms of like the superpower part of the question, for me, it's really been either turning around a team that I've been made responsible for, and really getting the most out of it. I've done that several times, but then I've also done some consulting projects where I've helped clients turn around and improve morale, lift morale. Like a lot of, a lot of times people will call on a strengths coach to come in because they want to do some team building. They want to do team building, they want to do morale building. And I've had a few that have called me in and we've had kind of that pre-meeting and they've said, I've got some real challenges here. And so we used individualization to bring people up to the next level. So for me, it's been in the professional context, that's probably been the superpower. And then, kind of on the personal home front, I think it's drawn on the most to just keep the peace at home. So I guess harmony. And like, where's my harmony? um,
we've said Kevin to go re-explore his CliftonStrengths profile.
Yes.
29. I'm 29 on harmony.
Wow.
But and that just shows you the beauty of strengths.
Yes.
You're leveraging the individualization to keep the peace at home, kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's awesome.
Kevin, I'd like to dig in a little bit on this whole rebuilding or reformulating teams, because when we were talking in the pre-show about this whole idea, you used a wonderful example of a team that I believe you described as pretty underperforming, and it was really about having the conversations about sort of matching them with what they did best. It was just really insightful.
yeah, so this particular client that I was working with, individualization was not a strength. Well, not a highly ranked strength, not one that the person drew on frequently. You got to be really careful when you're talking about this stuff, because I'll
Yeah.
never forget, it was on that same team that a person looked at their report and was like, empathy is 34. Oh my God, I'm in the wrong profession. And I'm like, no, hold on a second. That's
Yeah.
not, let's go through this workshop and you'll learn. And then by the end, he felt differently. But with this particular team, we encouraged them to really go all in and embrace it and celebrate it. And, we made little placards where we put under each person's nameplate by their office, their strengths themes, and made a big poster that was out in the lobby for the whole team to see. And the person on the team who had individualization at number 1 approached the leader and said, you told us to go all in. You told us that you wanted to embrace this. So we're all in and we're embracing it. I want to share with you some members of the team in ways that we could build the job and build the workflow and build the department around their strengths. And the director looked at it and said, this is absolutely amazing. This is like a whole new perspective that I just wasn't seeing. And it really, I mean, it's interesting because about 2.5 years later, they reached out and said they still can't believe it. And they still have the poster up, and But yeah, it was so, I think what was getting missed in the fury of the work, because this was an extremely busy department that had just constant pressure from up above. What was getting lost in the mix was the individual strengths and what motivated individuals and what made them feel great about coming to work, like they were really contributing to the greater good, was getting missed. Once they started to focus on that, it made a huge difference for them.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's I think that's really impactful, that this theme has that power to put people in the right places at the right time. Which I think is
And also
fantastic.
and also help with the engagement, people
Yeah.
wanting to feel good about what they're doing, and coming to work every day and understanding that what they do matters and that they matter.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, I think, not to launch into a whole other topic around engagement, but that's why that was it the third element of the Q12, the employee engagement tool that Gallup has developed. The third question is, do you have the chance to do what you do best every day?
Yeah.
I think that's probably, I'll speak for myself, but I'm making a small leap here, given that we're all coaches, that is a place where we would love to be able to put people and build that engagement. So I think you're bringing that individualization talents to that effort is massive, and it does set that sort of baseline building for further employee engagement. So thanks. We always open up to our guests to highlight, are there other ways you've seen the individualization talent theme show up differently, or maybe with a gradation that we haven't necessarily covered in all the wonderful insights you've already shared, whether it's somebody you've coached or somebody you've worked with that has had this theme, particularly higher up in their ranking, and how does that come out?
Well, I mean, I can't help but thinking of this one team that I was working with, and my kind of main point of contact, individualization was high, and we were having that conversation around, why are we doing this? What are your expected outcomes? What do you want to get out of this? And it turned out that that person's last performance review, they received some tough feedback, and they were feeling an urgency and a pressure to implement some change, and they were kind of getting spun up and losing focus and not really knowing which direction to go in. And when we started to dig a little bit deeper into that and ask the why and what was going on, it reminds me a lot of what Michael was saying before, how this individual felt that the people up above were ignoring, invalidating members of her team, um, discounting them, not respecting them, not seeing them for the people that they were and the talents that they brought and all the skills that they had, and was feeling a tremendous amount of frustration over that, because the head of the department felt, I've got all the right people on the bus, and we are doing good things. I don't understand why there's this perception, and how can we fix this perception? How can we show and demonstrate? And it was interesting, because it's just like what Michael was saying. She was developing an animosity towards the people that were not accepting
Mm.
of
Mm,
the people on her team. That was probably one of the more difficult, more challenging endeavors that I ever went through.
yeah. But there's that defender theme again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
the animosity, as much as that's the negative, the positive is you've got a wonderful leader that's trying to stand up for their people. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that started to come out in one of a couple of Michael's answers, and now we're hearing again. You don't want that animosity there, but at the same time, what an attribute to be able to stand and say, I've got the right people. I'm, maybe, moving them a seat or two on the bus is going to, find that couple extra points of improvement, but I've got the right people and I'm
Yeah.
defending them. That's so fascinating, again, to hear that thread come through.
It is so hard for a person who's truly a servant leader to be in an organization where people up above are more authoritarian in their leadership style.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I see Michael
Yeah.
nodding.
Yeah. I'm
And I'm,
shaking my head because I remember coaching somebody that had individualization and they had it, I think it was number 4, but it was relatively high when you were coaching them. You could see that they were really they're not getting the way in which they wanted to operate in the business. So it was like,
Mm.
okay, you're being told to do a certain thing, but then this person, she was being challenged back with certain decisions then that she was making in service of the team and all their unique strengths. Like what you said, Kevin, about bringing all of that together. And during the coaching, what we discovered was she needed that freedom, but within a framework. So she had to go back to her back up the chain and say, tell me the red lines here, guys. Where can I not cross? What can I do so that you can empower me and keep me engaged? So, because I'll bring my team with me, but
Yeah.
I need to have a small bit of autonomy here because Kevin, you mentioned it earlier too. If they're directive and they don't know what's going on, then they're going to take the hit for their team and be battered from both ends, corporate up a ladder and down the ladder. So,
Yeah.
we have to be very mindful of that, especially when you're coaching individualization. Hi.
Chad,
Awesome.
I had a leader who he had individualization high, and he was like we're seeing in Michael and Kevin, after a little bit of time with someone, he could see, the potential in that person. I wonder where developer was now that I'm thinking about it too, but he could see the potential in the person, saw the person, knew like that they would be a good fit, but maybe wasn't necessarily like the right fit for the job that they were like hiring for. But he would be like, but this person has all this like potential, and would bring them on. And in that moment, then it caused some animosity with, like, you have this job, you were brought on, you were hired as this, but you don't actually do that. You do like maybe like one part of that, but then do a bunch of other stuff. So it ended up creating a lot of these hybrid type roles, which we see a lot more now, I think, today than we used to in the past, where I think it's that change in set of mind frame and the way things are, that we're not cogs in the machine anymore. We actually have uniqueness, and so we could do different things and be maybe different, like, other than those traditional roles and responsibilities. But that could go both ways, right? Like, you could see that being wonderful and amazing, but then who's doing the work? Like, we hired someone to do this, but they're going to actually do something else. So we still are like missing that place where like we still need that work done. So who's going to step up to do that? So any thoughts on that? Have either of you experienced that too?
oh, Michael, I hope I'm not cutting you off, but
You work
Jen,
away. You work away.
no, you're making me think of an employee who was in a government organization, state government organization, and who wanted to lead that way and really lean into the individualization, and was allowing members of the team to work that in a way that really aligned well with their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a very regimented structure of a
Yeah.
government organization, that created a nightmare for that person, because then the supervisor said, what are you doing? That person's way outside their defined scope of the defined role. You've created an absolute nightmare for us now, because now
Mm-hmm.
that person thinks that they can do more and do other things. And I know I
How dare they?
personally, I've personally worked in very entrepreneurial startups where it was very ill-defined roles, and it was kind of like all hands on deck, do whatever it takes to
Yeah.
get it done every day. And then I've worked in overly structured, stifling government organizations where it can really be problematic.
Mm.
I often think of, because I didn't know strengths at the time, one of my first roles when I finished college was I got a government job, because in Ireland that was the thing to do. Get a
Yep.
job in the government and you'll have a pension for life and yada yada yada. It was all about stability. And I remember having a really great time, but needing a lot of variety. So I was going in between different departments, but there was a level in the role that you had. So different, say level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to simplify things. So you'd stay at level 2, but you could go in between departments for variety. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, I can't go anywhere else. I'm not allowed to do anything. There's too many policies and procedures. There's too much structure. I'm not getting that variety that I love. And I'm not even, I was training new people that were coming in. So when I think back, that was helping me stay a little bit longer because I was getting to deal with new people. But then I was like, yeah, I know you could do this really well, but you've got to tick this box. And I know you've got to do it. You don't want to do it, but you've got to do it. And now when I look back, when you mentioned that, Kevin, I'm like, that's probably why I left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The framework only extended so far. You go back to your other
Right.
phrase of freedom within a framework. The framework only extended so far. And when it doesn't allow you to doesn't allow you to place an individual where they can be best, that I'm sure that's going to bring some frustration. So Jen and I have been doing this in all of our other episodes because as human beings, we often can be very visual. Not everybody, but we can relate to things in our household or pictures that we see or pop culture we've referenced a few times in previous episodes. I'm curious about what sort of images come to mind when you think of the theme of individualization. I still can't say it right.
I have to pull you up on that, Chad. You're like, come on.
I cannot get it out. It's too many syllables and too many the wrong letters in the wrong order. Sorry.
It's great.
Individualization. I think I got it that time. But what images, other than me absolutely butchering the word, what images come to mind for this?
My new image is Chad butchering the word for individualization. So for me, I think for me, I'm going to stick with the rainbow image for me because there's a uniqueness to a rainbow. I know there's predominantly the colors that are in a rainbow, and yet there's a variation of those colors if we really dig deeper as well. So there's so much in that. And also my story around the story of the ugly duckling and the fairy tale around the ugly duckling and being unique in that way and then evolving as they were allowed to be themselves and found out who they were. So that's for me what it symbolizes.
I love that one.
Two great ones. Kevin, I'm going to turn the same question to you. He's got something on his cell phone.
I don't know if it's going to work.
You got to back it up.
Go back.
It's a picture. So my next door neighbor is the conductor of our local symphony orchestra. And we have a lot of those yard work conversations, when you're out there raking leaves and he'll be cutting the grass and he'll come over, hey, how you been, what have you been up to? And when we'll talk about upcoming performances that they have, and I think about that role, and then also like Saban, the head football coach. It's individualization comes in where you're figuring out that individual's strengths and what they can contribute to create either beautiful music or a national championship football team. So that those are the images that I was thinking about, after you kind of tasked me with that one.
Yeah. Nice. That's great. Jen, do you have one? Because I want to throw one other one into the mix here.
I'm gonna go pulp culture and go back to my favorite character from Parks and Recreation. If you've ever watched that show on NBC, Leslie Knope. If you find the episode of Ron's birthday and the way Leslie plans his birthday specifically for him is wonderful.
Excellent. And I'm going to throw out, it's probably a bit of a cliche-ish one, particularly since Gallup uses this image on a lot of their material, but I'm going to go with the DNA strand. I still think that that's one of the most poignant images of how unique we are as individuals, both biologically, but also just talking about how we think, feel, and behave in the world. And there's a lot just to that image for me, so I'm gonna stick with that one. But I love the ugly duckling, the symphony, and planning parties. That seems to be a thread running through our episode today. Is how do we throw parties to make sure every individual is taken care of. So
yeah, it's awesome. At this point, I want to bring this back to like that teamwork atmosphere, because a lot of what we do is feeling like we need to support those at work and understanding how they can use their talents either within the team if they have individualization, and they're a team member. And Kevin, you've touched on that already a little bit of an example of a team member who came to the leader and it explained like how we could restructure the team to really get the best out of everyone. So but I want to come back and start on the negative so we can end on a positive note. So I want to think about like in the ways as a team leader or maybe a team member with individualization could have a negative impact on the team. What are some ways that we see them like maybe slowing down the bus a little bit or potentially getting in the way of success? And Kevin, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. And again, you want me to talk about how it can get in the way, right? The negative?
Yes.
Yeah, the negative
Okay.
side.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, please.
So it can be perceived as inaction or dragging your feet or being too like taking collaborative too far in collaborating with the team. Sometimes teams want they just want to be told like this is the way we're going to do it, this is the way we're going to get it done, you got to go. They view somebody who takes the time to understand each individual and understand their strengths and then kind of try to weave that all together to get. That's what I've actually had performance feedback where you're being too consultative, you're being you're spending too much time getting everybody's points of views and perspectives. You need to just pick something and just go and get it done.
Yeah. I thought your wonderful example in the pre-show that you shared was thinking about like an emergency room and a doctor.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, like the ER,
standing
like an
around.
ER doc standing
Right.
around. You can't stand around and ask each member of the care team, well, what do you think? And what's your, exactly. There are times we all face where, if you're that head ER doctor and you've got a care team that's surrounding you, you just got to start giving out orders to save that person's life. I mean, you just,
Michael, same question.
I suppose it's similar in the sense that I kind of think about this in sense of a ranger and then individualization. And I suppose I'll give an example. It's like when I think of individualization and how it shows up for people in the organization, when it shows up well, for example, they're going to look for somebody that they know is going to do that, that has a uniqueness about them, and they're going to be able to bring that to the job, and you know find the right job, Jen, that you said earlier on for that person within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then with a ranger, I think what we do is we go, I have the perfect job for you. So it's you find the job first and then you try to fit the person to it. And I think when you're too far in individualization, you will procrastinate. You will sit there and you'll take too many. It's like the checklist becomes too over consuming of your time when in fact it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 criteria need to be met. It's like, but what if that person could suit there, or and it's like you're trying to make the best decision but you're not making any decision, you're
Sure.
stalling.
Mm.
Yeah. Now that's when it's in its raw state. Like
Yeah.
if you've developed it, you're right, it's more so that you're customizing really quickly and you're getting it
Right.
done.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
So you guys both brought up this idea of and you'll have to just correct me and step in and give the direction, but it was almost a tattletale or maybe oversharing of some information from a team member's point of view. If they have this information because they have individualization high, how can that get in the way of the team?
well, look, it's a relationship building team. So in its raw state, you're seeing people's uniqueness, and they're sharing with you information, and
Mm.
you know y- you may not have the permission to share the information that they're sharing with you, and maybe that person doesn't want everybody to know that it's their birthday next week. And to celebrate their birthday in an office environment is really going to upset that person because their other dominant talents are that they don't want to be, seen. They're not, they
Yep.
just want to execute, for example.
Sure.
So you know, I've seen it where I would often say, even not knowing the person's strengths, or I'd say they have that. I know they have that. It's like you're right, you know, because we live like that, don't we?
Mhm.
We identify
Yes.
people based on it. We
Yep.
label them. I shouldn't say that out
It
loud, but we do. We, you know, we do it. But it's being mindful of it, that it can, and especially from a coaching perspective with new coaches, reminding them of confidentiality clauses and not sharing. You know, you can say, oh, I have a previous client who did that, but being very mindful that the other client doesn't know the other client that you're coaching in that
Right.
organization. You know,
right.
so it's just the oversharing part, and just, again, freedom within a framework, but mindful of the individual. It's your
Mhm.
superpower here, so don't let it come and
Yeah.
damage you.
Right.
Yeah.
Become the Hulk in that instance, maybe, and it gets big and green and ugly. That's my
Lovely.
activator most days.
Love it.
Well,
Ke-
those are great examples. I wanted to go to back to the label for a second, because you're right. I think we all tend to do that and have, you know, labels for people. And it's one of the things that I've always said: if you're going to label me something, you can label me on my strengths. I'm okay with that, because it is what I know that I do well. And sometimes they go the wrong way, but at least, you know, I know there's a positive intent there that we're all leading with. And I think that's the other side of this, that that person with individualization who wants to celebrate the birthday, they don't know maybe that the other person doesn't want that shared, but they see them and they want to, you know, like, make them shine and put them first, and put them on the pedestal and give them their, you know, 5 minutes of
Yeah,
fame or
yeah,
whatever that is. So that's a hard thing for someone who doesn't have it to understand what that means to be seen. And you
yeah.
guys having that information and then wanting to share it, I'm sure it is a battle. Yeah, thanks.
Ke- Kevin,
Yep.
were there any negative impacts that beyond what we've talked about that you want to highlight? At least at the team member level. I know the examples you gave around leaders was
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm just wondering if you had any additional thoughts on a team member coming into the mix on a team and kind of having a negative impact with this theme.
Sure. I mean, after we had the pre-show meeting and we were talking through, I was thinking about what Michael was saying, and we were talking that whole conversation about kind of the team person who was getting a little too gossipy. I have seen that. I have seen where a team member who's high on individualization could have actually wreaked a little bit of havoc um, in getting too involved in trying to have a say in what other people were doing. And
Mhm.
while the person's heart might have been in the right place, they might
Yeah.
have had the right intention. To them, they were just trying to help. There, you will have people on the team who will perceive that in a very negative way. Like, what do stay in your lane. Don't
Right.
don't be worried about what I'm going to do or focus on. Um, I have actually seen that
Yeah.
work. Mhm.
It's interesting to bring up the lane metaphor because I'm hearing both stay in your lane, but also don't redraw my lane. Right.
Right.
Right,
It's
right.
yeah, you see these things, but I like the lane that I've got just fine. Stop
Mhm.
messing with it.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That's like those professors in the universities who have been teaching the same marketing class at 2:30 every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 25 years. And then you ask them to change what you're teaching to include social media marketing, right? 'Cause and
Right.
maybe do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. No, 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 no. I teach my class at 2:30 and this is my syllabus. And that's
Yeah.
it.
Wow.
It's great.
Yeah, that
So
definitely would get in the way of a lot of team positive behavior.
yeah,
If everybody's having to
absolutely.
redraw or re-solidify their lanes. So
Yeah, so let's talk about that positive intent then, and like the best ways that we could see this working within a team and in team leaders, team members. What are some ways that you guys believe that really individualization can positively impact the team? Kevin.
I mean, I keep going back to the whole turnaround scenario, the whole raising performance, improving and increasing engagement. I mean, I know that's a big thing what Gallup's all about,
Yeah.
but I mean, really, that for me personally, it's been those turnaround situations, and raising the bar, and achieving, with the one team that I inherited at one point was really, really poorly performing, and some national measures, assessments reflected that. And we kind of leaned in, and we took the individualization strengths, and redesigned workflow, redesigned the department, allowed everybody to do the things that they were really passionate about. And 4 years later, had a very positive national ranking, actually three of them.
Yes.
So for me, that's the main one.
And that's as a team leader, being able
Yes.
to put people in the right spot, right
Hmm.
seat.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Michael?
Think for me, I'm going to focus again on on an individual in a team member. So let's look at it from that point of view. Remember where when you've got individualization, there's a big desire to see everybody and their uniqueness. Okay. And Jen, you even say it in some of, and it's surprising individualization is so low because you always say be uniquely you. But anyway,
That's me.
that's
Mm-hmm.
that's your tagline. But
Thanks.
remembering that this can be when you're thinking of individualization, where's the spotlight? So is the need for you to know this information serving you or serving
Mm.
the other person? And I always think back to asking yourself when you're in individualization, when you're leaning into it, is this for the greater good of this person, or is this really I'm going to say a selfish act, even though I don't like to use the term selfish,
Yeah.
but is this more focused in on what I'm going to get from it? So,
Oh,
and if you're looking towards getting your career growth, you're only as strong as your team, and working your way up that ladder and so on. Bring everyone with you, because then we all rise together rather than go off on your own using
yeah.
that information.
Yeah, that was great.
Excellent.
That reminds me of we talked about a little bit about this in the empathy episode the last time, and so I wanted to bring that kind of point back to here. We're hearing a lot about how your individualization looks outwardly, and you just brought it back to like looking for like your motivation, your purpose. Like, is this, am I thinking about me in this case, or am I thinking in what I need to get, or am I thinking about what others need and what they need to get? So I think it's interesting. This is the second time we've seen that kind of flip, where most of the time we're talking about others and how it affects others, but then really understanding our now you got me doing it,
There we go.
individualization.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah,
Thanks.
That's
I'll just
thank you
press
to
mute
Chad.
from now on.
to put that spotlight, of taking that talent and actually focusing it inward and thinking about you individually and what that means,
Yeah,
your individualization and how you
yeah,
contribute to the team. I love
yeah.
that.
Not and not like not sacrificing self for
Yeah,
this.
I'm glad
Sorry,
he
dog.
came back.
I'm really glad you brought
I'm
that
like,
in.
go away, dog. Go away,
Yeah.
dog.
No, I'm so glad you that sacrificing self thing comment that you made, because I know we've had previous discussions where we talked about how you get a team in a room, and you talk about all the workflows and all the tasks that need to get done. You put them up on the dry erase board, and you start talking about, okay, now who's going to do this, who's going to do this. And if you're the kind of leader that has individualization high, and you let people pick all the things that they want and that align with their strengths, then you got to look at what's left on that board and figure out, well, who's going to do it. And there's been times where it's like, okay, well, then I'll be the one that does it. um, and that can create, it can create stress. It can create problems on the home front, because if you've got to spend extra time learning to do something that you don't know how to do, or that you may not have been inclined to do, there's a little bit of a heavier lift in
Mhm.
executing
Yeah.
against that. So that it can create, but for me, what I've always tried to focus on the positive side of it, because as the head of the department, or as the leader, it's taken me into areas where I may not have ever thought I was going to go, and help me develop skills that I may not have developed had it not been for that situation. And I mean, like, I wouldn't be here today, and I would have never met Jen had my team not identified Clifton's Gallup Strengths Finder as an assessment that we wanted to offer.
Yeah,
Um, but then they all picked, one person wanted MBTI, one person wanted something else. And so then I was the one who got and I'm glad I did. I mean,
Yeah.
it's transformed. It has transformed my life, both at home and at work. But I mean, I think, to Michael's point, there can be at times where, the person who's got high individualization can put so much into putting everyone else and their uniqueness and focusing on that they can tend to neglect themselves.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful you brought that story back up, because that was
Yeah.
actually going to be my very next question. Was we had talked about that a little bit in the pre-show, and I thought that was a wonderful highlight. I want to make sure we covered. I think what I'm hearing in your sharing there, though, is it's again that individualization focused back on self. That you take a moment to still say, who am I as a unique individual? Who am I as a unique leader? What is my unique contribution here? And honoring that. So I think
Yeah.
that, particularly for people that are still learning about this theme and still understanding how it plays out in their lives, that they make sure that they take a moment and be like, okay, yes, I identify all these wonderful attributes about all the people I work with and all the people in my life, but that I still need to honor my own individual talents, abilities, perspectives, the knowledge I want to go out and develop. And so I really appreciate you
Yeah.
bringing that back up, Kevin. I think that's really insightful. That those of you that have individualization themes, that you don't get lost amongst everybody else.
Yeah.
So
Power of pause, Chad.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
You
we've
know,
talked about power pause in plenty of other episodes.
Every
So
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
kudos.
And it's so relevant, because if you don't it's not like the analogy on the airplane. If you don't put your own oxygen mask on first,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
not going to be of any help to anybody on that plane, no matter how unique they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Excellent.
Great point.
So as we're coming to the end here, we've had a fantastic conversation. I want to ask the two of you, as we've had this conversation, I'm curious if there are maybe one or two highlights that you think people really have to kind of walk away from this, either this episode or an understanding about this theme, that are really kind of key points. And I'll start with Kevin, because Michael's gotten all the other starts, so I'm going to put Kevin. This is the one time Kevin didn't want the mic, and I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah.
So we want to do key takeaways for
Yeah,
somebody
just key
who's
takeaways around this theme, or something that
Or
maybe
something
even
you've
something
learned.
you've learned in this episode. But yeah, just if somebody's listening to the last 10 minutes of this, we clip this last 5-10 minutes. What are some of the key points you would want somebody to make sure that they understood around this theme?
Okay, so I'm gonna bring up what Jen and I were taught when we took the class out in Nebraska, which to me was probably one of the most powerful images from that whole experience that I use every single time I'm introducing strengths to an audience that's not familiar with it. And that's the gas grill analogy, where if you imagine a gas grill with the knobs and all the different burners, and how you might turn the heat up and then turn the heat back down, with individualization, I think what we've talked about today is that sometimes you can turn it up, really leverage it in certain
Yeah.
scenarios, in a team scenario where you're trying to maximize the team's performance and bring it to another level, where you might have to turn it down, where you have to is the stories that we were talking about, how much, like, I wonder how much time it takes Michael to shop for gifts for people, right? Because you like, and then how much stress or anxiety they can, because I know I've gone through it. I mean, leading up to the holidays, if we started too late, it would be really stressful, because we'd be like, oh my god, I got to find the perfect gift. So that might be a time to take the dial on the gas grill and turn individualization back a little bit. So I think that was one point I wanted to make, was understanding how to leverage it, but then also learn how to moderate it, so
Yep.
that you don't go to those dark places. I appreciated that part of this conversation, is really focusing on how to be really careful and watch out how it might slow things down too much, or it could create like a gossiping situation where somebody's doing more harm than good.
Mhm.
So I would say that.
Okay. And Michael, to you.
My big thing about individualization is kind of a summary of how Jen was talking about it earlier, and looking at it from the point of view that don't forget that you are uniquely you as well. So it is relationship building. It is about knowing and seeing other people, but see yourself first and respect yourself, respect your time, respect who you are and the uniqueness that you bring. And then, as Kevin said, leverage other strengths and whether you need to dial up or dial down individualization to get the maximum what you need in that moment.
Nice. Thank you so much for those closing thoughts. I'm going to thank again both of you for taking so much time to share with us. Jen and I, in preparing for this, for even inviting you, we were recounting that this theme for us is relatively low, not all the way at the bottom at 32, 34, but definitely does not come out in the ways that it does, that you've highlighted so eloquently and so concretely too, that I think it really helps us. So I want to thank both of you, Kevin and Michael, for joining us.
Thank you.
We're gonna, for those of you that have listened all the way through, we're gonna have their contact information in our show notes. We're gonna encourage all of you that if you've listened and you found something useful, drop us a comment, leave us a review. Come back again for future episodes. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep having great coaches like Kevin and Michael come and join us to keep talking about the different CliftonStrengths talent themes. And so without extending this episode any further, I'm going to say thank you again and wish everybody well. I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting. My co-host is
Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
And thank you so much. And everybody have a great day.